Good evening. Tonight, Sunday, March 4th, 2018, or indeed today from Saitama City, Japan, Monday, March 5th, 2018, I once again would like to speak directly to the youth of the community and the residents, the many residents who were witness to all of the activities that occurred over many long years in the community of Woodside and beyond. I have the opportunity here to have great distance between myself and all of the work and all of the people who made that work possible. And indeed, it's an honor yet again to make observations in an attempt to illuminate you and the public as to perceptions and thoughts that you may already have, but either A, ignore your own natural instincts, or B, you suppress them in an attempt to win favor with those who are assumed to have power, real or perceived. Living in Japan, I have an opportunity to observe a comparable civilization. And while I don't want to make uh, this message only about the experience here in Japan, I think it's notable that even now, after so many have already witnessed the difference between doing things and actual efforts, as opposed to words, festivals, parades, what all of that is designed to do. I'm convinced, based upon a comparative study, that to uplift people, a community, is essentially an exercise in performing duties and tasks that others won't. Very thankless tasks. Not many victories will be achieved in those efforts. Most of them go unseen. And the greater, the more noble the person, the more invisible those efforts become, whether yesterday, today, or tomorrow. And what does that tomorrow look like? Merely from the social media and from those who have contacted me over the course of many months, I am yet reconvinced that the nature and the premise of the problem and the circumstances has not moved from where it was a decade ago. In fact, it has solidified its position in the eyes of many, and indeed, it's a source of continuing and persistent torment. The distractions and distortions, in an attempt to keep those who are in power a little longer, to obfuscate, obscure the reality, to worship those. You know, it's funny, someone mentioned to me once that, well, I hate those other leaders, but my guy, I like him. I want to be close to him or her. And inevitably, that was an insight into how people perceive themselves as opposed to those who they assume are in a position of power to help them, not so much to help the community, but to feel important by proximity, as if the person that they're trying to curry favor with will remember them. There was many an opportunity, and the youth were there, and many of the residents could observe that your attendance at a meeting with people in power or people who seem to have a tremendous ability to gravitate towards a camera, in the end, they're never there for you. The evidence is overwhelming. And I witnessed this. And yet, not an inch of ground has been gained, not a single day to our lives added, or an inch to our stature raised. And why is that? We have allowed ourselves to be mystified by our own feelings. Your first thought about the nature of the people that you're dealing with right now in an attempt to even resolve a simple issue in the community should be evidence enough that my assertions and your eyeball witness as to the difference between doing things and doing nothing but deploying lots of words should have and yet could create an environment where you and the many can fight back on even ground. Unfortunately, I believe that ship has sailed. There's no point in pretending that for all of the efforts that were made, and now many months have passed since the cessation of those activities, like vultures who hover down over a decaying carcass, have moved right in and filled the void with lots more words, more festivals, more things to distract you. Meanwhile, relatively good people, the great majority who find themselves in the bystander group, fall right into the trap laid for you since the foundation of the world. Consider why you would offer effusive praise to someone who has essentially deceived you. One random act of kindness, my friends, does not restore the confidence of people. Don't allow yourself to fall into the trap of effusive praise, the backslapping. In your heart, you know that, well, it really wasn't that important. But yet, allowing the other party to think it's important and meaningful in the grand arc of life causes that other party to continue to do more of it. And then there's no way to even confront it or to contain it. The clarity of distance, again, my friends, has provided me a unique perspective on what went wrong. My responsibility to understand the personalities involved in shaping and forming the very community in which you live. I mean, in essence, Woodside is not all that different from any community in America. I have yet to witness a word solving anything. It may move the barometer, but in the end, hands have always had to bring themselves to iron. And those iron and Woodside were represented by tools, attacking the simple problems in an attempt to build the confidence, restore the environment to pristine condition. Nevertheless, I witness now from a great distance, and it's not easy to get a total picture of the situation, yet the video and photographic and textual evidence indicates a relative breakdown in what we were attempting to do. Some misunderstand that it was just me, but behind that were many other people. For all the years of attempting to reverse all of those thousands of little sins that had so plagued our people, very quickly, all of it is being rolled back. Any one of the thousands of locations that I, or the youth, or the missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ, or great men like Joe and Teresa McGowan, or Pastor Joe, or Mustafa, and others, and Nelson and Elba, visited and revisited and revisited, those efforts are being reversed as if it never occurred, which is exactly what those people who we identify as verbal activists wanted. I mentioned before that here in Japan, there's no need for a 311. You shouldn't even have to ask for simple things to be accomplished. I was witnessing recently there was a garbage situation on Roosevelt Avenue and 78th Street and 72nd Street and 41st Avenue. These were areas that the youth and I cleaned to pristine condition over many long years. And now suddenly we're back to the words again. Oh, what should someone do? If you do not show what to do, you are asking people who are essentially lazy to reverse their own natural tendency to use words or to have someone else do what we ourselves need to do to show them how it's done. That, my friends, was a powerful message. I'll stand on that because of the nature of the evidence and as well the nature of the problem. Here, so many thousands of miles away, some would wonder, well, in the end, David, you were the one who evacuated and admitted to defeat. And yes, it's true. Not a day goes by, no matter what work I'm involved in, actual work with very serious people, to a person. Yes, it is a defeat. I allowed myself to ignore the warning signs of the failure of what I was doing. The youth were part of that. But through that failure, they learned some elements of success, regardless of the level of resources available to you or the community. Sheer willpower, which is what I adopted naturally here in Japan over long years, can do a lot. You may not need all of the financial resources that other groups seem to ask for at every opportunity. However, I should have asked more. I should have pressured more businesses to cough up money to help pay for all the operations that were going on in the community and beyond. Meanwhile, your leaders, those who would like to be your leaders, particularly those in the AAA Farm Club, or even now, stepping up to the batter's box, hoping that they'll be noticed and they'll move up to the big leagues. Our local government and your local institutions are essentially a boot camp for learning how to deceive you and the many as to the nature of the actual problem, the very premise of the issue. The issue that we were dealing with a decade ago is yet still unresolved. In fact, once the Trojan horse was allowed into the fort, it was all over. Issues of overdevelopment, gentrification, runaway rental prices, overall instability. That door was opened, and every effort that I and the youth were making, A, only was providing a temporary cover to the true power of those developments, and B, we could have and should have, and still can, even at the late hour, attempt to utilize more words like the verbal activist to voice our concerns. Indeed, the people in power and those who attempt to be as close to power as possible really don't care about what you think and what you say. It's an exercise only in light of comparing it to a tennis ball match. You hit the ball to them, they hit the ball to you, and in the end, nothing is gained. We know that, but knowing that, to be able to carve out a position, as much as I detest it, I and the youth and other residents need to speak up without fear. I mentioned to the youth on numerous occasions, and some never understood the meaning of it. In 100 years' time, no one will ever even know we existed. We'll be washed from the history books. Incidentally, some of our rulers now are attempting to wash away the history even after months. The body's not even cold, and an attempt to distort and deceive you and the many as to what has occurred, what might occur, is all new. It's old as new again. It's a curious case. Luckily, in today's world, we can counter that through evidence. Because it is clear to me, there used to be a saying that seeing is believing. Nope. Eyes apparently are more deceptive to you in the mind than words. You've all been preconditioned and educated from a very young age to accept words as the only method to resolve problems and to reduce conflict. Leading by example from the front and doing more than those who are working with you or potentially under you. is less important than creating a phantasm of being akin to a pharaoh. And it's easy because the pharaoh has many acolytes, many who would wish to seek a pleasant audience with that person. They don't even know why, but they do. Our group was very committed to the cause, very loyal. Their honor was at stake, and so was mine. If I didn't have the experience I had, I would wash away the honor. But honor meant something. Faith, in the end, it became all about the youth and the missionaries. My continual torment over what has occurred is because I believe so much of what we were doing. It was not my original intention to leave everything behind and to communicate to the youth and to the missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and to the residents and others from this distance. But the handwriting was all over the wall. We had already lost. I couldn't accept that. I can't accept it now. That's why I continually go back to it. And some would say, well, David, just put it in the past. Because of my long years in Japan, where everyone keeps the past close to their heart and their mind, on a personal and a societal level, you adapt it naturally. You realize that merely putting it in the past leaves it unresolved when there is still opportunity for resolution. Some problems in life will end with no resolution, no triumphant ending. And even if there were to be a second round to all this in the community of Woodside and beyond, at the very least, the only hope that we could have is to be able to lose again with greater honor, to buy time for the next generation coming forward. The youth right now, those closest to me who are already moving into later years of high school and college, are into very difficult and serious studies, which I applaud because we're going to need them in positions of power. Young men like Claudio and Hawk, Sumaya, Edison, Michael, Daniel, Evelyn, Jason, Sam, Monet, such smart young people, and all the missionaries, particularly ones close to me. They know who they are. Elder Christie, Elder Draper, Elder Nielsen, Sister Johnson, Sister Benavides. Did so much for Woodside, so much. My sense of complete humiliation has continued to override any sense of moving ahead because honor means something, loyalty, sacrifice, which we attempted to do. Those values can't be erased from memory, especially when we're dealing with the wolves. They come with you with a smile, and right away they're hoping that you disappear, and I gave them that opportunity. My retreat back to Japan had consequences. Every decision affects every other single decision that's been made. Nothing needs to last forever, and I expect one day, a day of my choosing, that I can return and help to balance the activities of the community and to build a much stronger organization, one that's as well funded as many of the organizations, whether civic or religious, in your community, that continue to deploy rapid numbers of words and photos of staged events, random as they are, rare as they are, performing rituals and incantations designed to make you think that things are moving ahead in a proper way. And you know in your heart that it cannot be this way. There is no reason to offer exaggerated praise for people that have essentially done nothing for you and will do nothing for you. Never mind the general issues of a community or a neighborhood or a town or a village. They haven't earned your trust or your respect. Is it reciprocal? Does it make you feel proud? Do you feel better and stronger? Do you feel like you have influence? You only have influence until you attempt to exert it. Most of the people that you associate with, these verbal activists at every level, because it's a boot camp, will never come through for you. They don't know what it means. I mentioned before, in 12 years I have yet to see a pothole or a broken street light or a cracked sidewalk. How could that be? The country that imports everything. They require the singular most important element of this civilization here in Japan is people, power. It's incredible to watch. Nevertheless, they have their problems too. It's not easy being a stranger in a strange land where you don't have loyalists. You're essentially alone. It's very hard to fight alone. You succumb to the consensus. And sometimes the consensus is wrong. But in Japan, in terms of the overall public environment and the infrastructure, the basics of human civilization, I think they have a good, as close to an answer as possible. Of course, naturally, the uniformity of Japan makes it a little easier to push things through. Nevertheless, there is something to be said for the vast organizational capability and a focus on minimizing the loudmouths and elevating the next group coming along so that persons like me will decrease and they will increase. I mean, today in Woodside, now that the youth-powered effort has collapsed, and really I have only myself to blame for that occurring, the fewer and fewer elements who were there with us from the beginning, such as Tommy Leonard. What a great man, Tommy Leonard. Lynn Hodge, they're still out there. And Joe and Teresa are still out there, attempting to do the right thing and not asking for anything as compensation. If I and the youth sent a bill to every business and every government agency for all the work that was performed, it would be in the millions. We would have more money than all of the ancient organizations of Woodside put together, and it would be deserving of such. But that did not make for all of the efforts that occurred in the community. I recommend that the youth, as they study, observe what words do, the impact they have, tremendous impact, far more than the deeds, in terms of shaping and sculpting the public debate. Our duty in whatever deeds we will be performing in the future, we are forced because of the nature of how our people have been educated to confront their words with more words. We will not yet be able to fight on the ground that we've chosen. They have the ground, the high ground. Yes, many of them, these verbal activist types, took the low road to attain that high ground. Nevertheless, we cannot deny their power to distort and disturb and to torment, to create all of us into an image that they wanted. And then as we get older, to become the cranky old person who once in a while goes to their meetings and yells at them and then goes, and then they're mocked behind their faces. They want us to go down that same road and become the crazy old uncle in an attempt to minimize you. And of course, we as human beings, the more we say and the less we're being responded to, we tend to, especially as Americans, to say more and to become almost maniacal in our assertions. And we have to temper ourselves and remind ourselves that that's exactly what they want. They want to isolate and cut you off as if you were a virus, an infection. But you, the next group coming along, you have a vastly different experience in this community. And it didn't require any money. You weren't paying anyone to do what you were doing yourselves. You were doing it continuously, repeatedly over many long years. That has yet to really have been recognized for what it was and what it can be still. And I know in my heart, that you will do the right thing. You've already, I am sure, been involved in meetings and public forums, and your first impulse was probably like most other people. This sounds like a lot of nonsense. But yet, in the second meeting, if you have to attend, and there are situations where you have to attend, you'll be able to be moderate and temperate and careful with your words, to be able to strike a few in their hearts and maybe gain a few allies in the cause of doing things at a future time. You'll be attending community boards and Woodside on the Moves and any number of churches in the community. The older they are, sometimes the more they forget about what the essence of faith was. Doesn't matter. It could be any faith. You'll be able to discern immediately what you need to do to balance out the 99% of your life, which will be words. You already know that your 1% of deeds already could balance the 99%. So imagine what you could do with just half of the amount of deeds that you did. And be able to take those words out to a public forum. I'm counting on you. Right now, I'm powerless to do anything about anything that's occurring. All I have is words. All I have is the isolation of being essentially in the David bunker, as far away as I could be from all that I believed in, as I possibly could, retreating back to safe ground, an area I know very, very well, working with very serious people. That's the reality of Japan. And that was the reality which I attempted to and succeeded in some forms to communicate. The youth now know what serious effort looks like. It doesn't have to be boring, but it surely has to be serious. Doing much for so many, for so little, will probably be, no matter what manifestation of a future effort looks like, will inevitably be part of it. We will not be able to eliminate the bystander effect, the rolling eyes, the snide comments. That's just a nature of the American mind. They can't do or they won't do, so it's better to diminish what you do, and especially the youth. In one way, you, as the youth, as the missionaries, could see that all of your efforts, in the end, can be washed away from the histories almost immediately. And in that sense, that first learning experience of dealing with the American society, which you are entering and will enter, uh, should be a clarion call for you to know what to do at the expected hour. Words mean something. You are who you are. I have a certain way of approaching the world. I am who I was. I can't escape myself. I can make adjustments as I move forward. I cannot do as I did yesterday. So I count on today and tomorrow to be able to achieve what we were hoping to achieve. And all of it had to do with revelation and exposition of the reality of the circumstances of people. Ignore the allure of those who you perceive to have power, because those people are all picked out from the chorus line. They're in training. Not one of them can really be trusted. They won't get their hands dirty. A few choice words and a pat on the back is about all they're worth, at best. Or take on some issue that makes people feel good. The goalpost never moved. Not a yard gained. Isn't that something? Anyway, I thank you, the people of Woodside and beyond, people like Stephen Melnick and Michael Perman, all the way out in Forest Hills, who I know were there and doing. And I thank the people of Woodside, and especially the youth and the missionaries, for believing in what I was doing. And indeed, we will have yet another opportunity to reverse the situation and fortune.